welcome to Decoding Confidence. I'm your host, Advita Patel, a confidence and influence coach. And over the next 20 minutes or so, I'm going to be digging into what confidence actually looks like in the workplace. Not the fake it till you make it stuff, but the real deal. So whether you're navigating tricky stakeholder conversations, trying to get your voice heard in the boardroom, or you're just trying to figure out how to back yourself when the imposter syndrome kicks in, this is your space. Enjoy this episode. Today, I'm going to be talking about something that so many people struggle with, and I mean really struggle with. I've been through it, some of the coaches I work with have been through it, the leaders I support have been through it as well. And that is asking for what you want at work, whether that's a promotion, a pay rise, a new role, or just more recognition for the work that you're already doing. We know we deserve it and we know we've earned it, yet somehow when it comes to actually having that conversation, many of us freeze and we talk ourselves out of it. We decide it's not the right time, or maybe we're not ready yet, or maybe we'll just wait and see if somebody notices. We say that to ourselves all the time. I know I've said it lots and lots of times throughout my career. So today I'm going to break that down for you, and I'm going to get very practical and share some real techniques for building the confidence to ask for your worth without the cringe, without the apology, and without the fear of what happens if the answer is no. So let's get into it. So before we talk about how to ask, I'm going to get honest with you about why we don't ask. And it's the fear of rejection. That fear is real. Nobody wants to put the hand up to make themselves vulnerable and then hear the word no. It feels personal and it can feel like a judgment on our value as a person rather than the decision about the job or the salary. And then there's this kind of inner critic, imposter syndrome, whatever you want to call it, that little voice that says, who do you think you are? You know, the one that makes you convinced that somehow you have tricked everybody and fooled everyone into thinking that you're more capable than you actually are. But here's the thing I really want you to sit with. Staying quiet isn't safe. It may feel safe, but what it's actually doing is costing you. It's costing you in money, it's costing you in opportunity, it's costing you in how you show up every single day. You can't pour into a role from an empty cup. And that resentment that you get also builds quietly. So I want us to change that story. And I'm going to use my belief framework to help you understand how you could do this. Now, if you've been following my work for a while, you'll know that I talk a lot about the belief framework. I've mentioned it in previous episodes as well. It's the 7 habits of confident leaders. And today I'm going to pull out some elements that are relevant to when it comes to advocating for yourself at work. So the first one, which will be no surprise, is boldness. Now, boldness doesn't mean being loud. It doesn't mean being aggressive or pushy. Boldness is simply the decision to act despite the discomfort that you may face. Choosing to have that conversation even when your stomach might be doing somersaults or you've got that sickly feeling. And the reframe I want you to think about is, instead of thinking, I'm going to ask for a pay rise, I want you to think about what your value is. What value are you bringing? And open up that conversation about how that's reflected. It's the same conversation, but one version puts you in the position of strength rather than someone whose hand is out begging for more. Boldness is also about timing your confidence, not waiting until you feel 100% ready. So speaking from experience, that day rarely comes. You have to ask before you feel ready. And you build your confidence through the act of asking. Nobody is ever going to feel 100% ready. You never will. I promise you, you'll always have a reason or an excuse about why you've not asked. The second is empathy. And this one does surprise people, because empathy in the context of negotiating for yourself can feel a bit weird. But what I want you to understand is you need to remember what your manager or your organization may be dealing with. So things like their pressures, their priorities, their constraints. You can reframe your ask in a way that speaks to their world, not just to yours. So when I spoke about timing and boldness, this is where you may want to consider it in the empathy section, because you do need to understand and see what's going on in the workplace before you put your ask in. So if your workplace is going through a massive redundancy program, or it's clear that the revenue isn't where it needs to be, you going in asking for more money is probably not going to land effectively. So be mindful about the pressures and the challenges that the organization or your line manager might be going through. So if your line manager is going through some personal challenges, or you can sense the stress in their life, you may want to cushion that or be aware of what is going on there before you go in with your ask. And that's where empathy really comes alive. So you're not just saying, I want more money. You're saying, here's the value that I deliver. Here's how I contribute to what matters to the organization. And here's how recognizing that can benefit the both of us. Empathy, as I said, also helps you go into that conversation with curiosity rather than defensiveness, which makes it much easier for leaders and line managers to say yes to. Then you've got L. L is for learning. Confidence isn't something you either have or you don't. I've said this before, it's like a muscle, and like with any muscle, you build it through practice, reflection, and the willingness to learn from every experience, including the ones that don't go your way. Failures are just as important as successes. So think about, have you prepared for this conversation? Have you done your research? What's the market rate for your role? What are your achievements over the last 12 months? And what specific problems have you solved? And if you can't answer them, articulate them clearly, then you're going to have to go back to the drawing board and start again, because you need to be clear in your mind before you go in for the ask. Because when you know what you're asking for, you'll go in more grounded and you'll go in more confident, and you won't be winging it. You're presenting a case. I is for integrity, and this is huge. Integrity is asking for what you believe you deserve. Not inflating your worth or not underselling it either. It means being honest about where you are right now and where you want to be. It also means being consistent. If you're going to advocate for yourself, make sure your day-to-day visibility matches the version of yourself you're trying to present, because your ask should never be a surprise to the people that you're asking. They should already see it because you've been showing up in that way for a while. And then you've got E for energy, and how you carry yourself going into that conversation matters a lot. Energy is contagious. If you walk in deflated, apologetic, or you're already expecting a no, that energy is going to land in that room even before you open your mouth. So before you go in, do whatever you need to do to ground you. Some people need to move, some people need to go and walk, to stretch, some people need quiet and reflection, and some people need to talk it through with a trusted friend or their learning circle or whatever. Right, now we're going to get a bit tactical here. Here are some things you can actually say and do that will help you. The first one is anchoring your ask in the evidence, not the emotion. So whether you feel like you deserve more or not is a really hard thing to someone to respond to practically. But if you say something like, over the past year, I've had to lead 3 major projects, I've increased X by Y, and I've taken on Z amount of responsibilities beyond my original role, and I want to talk to you about how my compensation may reflect that, that gives the other person something to work with, rather than going, I work really hard, I stay really late, I come really early, and I feel like I need a promotion. That isn't the reason for you to get that promotion or that pay rise. So lead with the facts and back it with feeling, not the other way round. The second tip is practice it out loud. And I mean seriously, not in your head, I mean out loud with a friend, in the mirror, into a voice note, whatever works for you. Your words need to leave your body before they go into that conversation. If you've only ever rehearsed this in your head, and the first time you're going to say out loud is going to be in the actual meeting, that's going to put a lot of pressure on your shoulders. So practice it out loud and make sure that you know what you're saying and how you're saying it. The third tip is reframing rejection. If the answer is no, and sometimes it will be, that's not the end of the conversation. I want you to ask, what would I need to do for this to be a yes in the future? That question is really powerful. It keeps the conversation going, it gives you a roadmap, and it signals that you're serious and you're invested and you're not going anywhere. It's really important for you to ask that question. Number 4 is getting comfortable with silence. And oh my goodness, this is the worst one for me. I am terrible at the strategic silence. So I really want you to think about what silence means for you. So after you've made your ask, stop talking. This is harder than it sounds. We are so wired to fill that silence, especially when it's uncomfortable silence. We tend to talk ourselves backwards. We start hedging, we start qualifying our ask, we start apologising. Please don't. Make your ask and just let it sit there. And if you really have to say something, then say, I'm going to let you reflect on that. Do you need some time to reflect on that? Or shall we set up another meeting and I give you time to think about that? Don't back down, don't back off, don't apologise. I have learned this the hard way. Strategic silence is critical for you to get that yes. Now this one, the last final tip, is probably one of the most important tips I want to share with you. Separate your worth from the outcome. This is the mindset shift that changes everything. Your value does not go up or down based on whether someone says yes to you today. You are not more valuable if they agree, and you're not less valuable if they say no. Your worth exists independently of one conversation. Please remember that. Now, the next part of this episode, I want to talk to you specifically if you are looking for a new role, because the job market right now is just horrific. The stories I have heard about the job market is just not great right now, and it can really put your confidence and your self-esteem into a spiral. So I want to share some support, some tactics, some tips with you if you're going through the job search to make sure that your confidence stays sustainable. Job hunting is one of the most emotionally demanding things you can do professionally, full stop. You're essentially putting your hand up over and over again and saying, pick me. And that requires a level of sustained self-belief that is genuinely hard to maintain, especially if it's taking you longer to find a role than you had hoped. So I want to share with you a few things that I think can really shift how you show up in interviews. So the first one is know your value before you walk in through that door. Now, that sounds obvious, but most people haven't done it. Before every interview, sit down and write out properly in full sentences 3 or 4 things you are proud of in your career. Not your responsibilities, your impact. What changed because you were there? What got better? What got faster, safer, stronger, more efficient, more human because of the work you did? If you struggle to answer that, that's the work you need to do. Because if you can't articulate your own value, you can't expect someone else to see it. Second, stop trying to seem perfect. I know that sounds counterintuitive, but just hear me out here. Interviews that feel like performance tend to produce candidates who feel forgettable. The ones who stand out are the ones where they clearly know themselves well. They know their strengths, they know their edge, they know the lessons they've taken away from failures, and they talk about all of that with confidence and honesty. So when you're asked about a challenge that you faced, or a weakness that you might have, or a failure that you were part of, own it. Tell them what you learned, because that kind of self-awareness is genuinely rare and it can be quite impressive. Third is ask questions that show that you've been thinking. Most candidates save their questions for the end and ask something sometimes a bit generic about the culture or about progression. I want you to flip it. Come with questions that show that you've done the thinking. So things like, I noticed that your organization has been focusing on X. How is this team contributing to that? Or what does success look like in this role after the first 6 months? These are just impressive questions that have showed that you really thought about it, but it also gives you real information that will help you decide whether this is the right place for you. Because that's the other thing I want you to remember, and I say this all the time, you are also interviewing them. This is a two-way conversation, and it's really important that you have that awareness about what the culture is like for you, and if the culture is going to help you be the best you can be and help you thrive. Now, this one is a tough one for many people, and it's negotiate. Always negotiate. If they make you an offer, negotiate. Not aggressively, not apologetically, not like tiptoeing in, but confidently and clearly. Know your number before you go in, have a range, and be prepared to say, I'm really excited about this opportunity. Based on my experience and the market rate for this role, I was looking at X amount. Is there any flexibility here? Most employers, this is important to remember, expect negotiation. The ones who pull offers because someone has the nerve to ask for what they're worth are not worth your time. Honestly, you've just learned something about that culture, and it's probably something for you to think a lot about. Right, hopefully that helped, which now takes me quite nicely into rejection. And I want to spend a bit of time talking about rejection, because rejection is the one thing that can stop people asking for their worth, whether it's going for an internal promotion or asking for a pay rise or job offer. People are going to face rejection, and you're going to face it at some point, probably more than once. So it's really important you know how to deal with it. And I'm not going to dress it up because it does hurt. It does sting. And it's supposed to sting because when it does, it means that you cared enough to try. But what I want you to understand is that rejection needs to be used as information, not as a final verdict on you. When you get that no, in whatever context that no comes in, your job is to get curious about it. What can you actually learn from that no? If it's an internal conversation, ask for specific feedback. Not what did I do wrong, but what can strengthen my case next time? If it's a job application, ask for feedback where you can. Not every organisation is going to give it to you, but some will. And even the smallest insight can be the thing that helps you shift your approach. Don't make rejection more than what it actually is. And this is why so many people can come unstuck. One no becomes evidence of a pattern, and then that pattern becomes a story, and then that story becomes, I'm not good enough, or this industry isn't for me, or maybe I should just stay where I am. And I'm saying this from lived experience. I was exactly the same. And your brain will do this to you because it's trying not to hurt you. It's trying to protect you from future rejection by building a case on why you shouldn't try again. But that case is made from nothing real. It's made up of fear dressed up as a bit of logic. And pretending that rejection doesn't hurt is not the way forward either. Because I think there's a version of staying positive advice that actually can be quite damaging, like toxic positivity that we often talk about. You don't have to be fine. You are allowed to be disappointed, frustrated, and even angry. You have to give yourself that. Sit with it for a day or two if you need to. But then, and this is critically important, you need to come back. Come back to your evidence, come back to the things you know to be true about what you bring. Come back to the question, what's my next step? In this context, it isn't about bouncing back instantly. It's about deciding that no doesn't get to define who you are. Job searching and salary negotiating in isolation is brutal. So you need to find your people, whether that's a mentor, whether that's a trusted colleague, whether that's a coach, a peer, even an online community. People who will remind you of your worth when you have temporarily forgotten it. That's who you need to surround yourself by. People who celebrate the small wins with you, not just the big ones. And getting an interview is a win. Getting feedback from a rejection is a win. Learn to track those moments because your journey is so much longer than any single outcome. Now, I want to talk a little bit as well about acknowledging something that would feel wrong if I didn't speak about it. For some of us, asking for more at work carries a bit of extra weight. If you're a woman, if you're from a marginalised community, if you're the only in the room, the fear of being seen as difficult and demanding or even too much is not just in your head. There are real systemic dynamics at play here, and I don't want to gloss over that at all. We have to be very real about that. But I don't want that reality to be the reason why you stay silent, because that's not fair either. The world needs your voice in these conversations. And the more of us who advocate for ourselves and our allies for others, clearly, confidently, consistently, the more we shift what's considered normal, the easier it's going to be for the person who comes after us. I want you to remember that you deserve that seat at that table and you more than deserve to speak at it. So, as I wrap up this episode, here's your challenge this week. If you're in a current role looking for more, identify one thing you want to ask for. Write it down, make sure you practice it, saying it out loud, and then when it feels right, not perfect, put it out there. If you're job hunting, Before your next application or interview, I want you to write down 5 things you're genuinely proud of in your career. Not your job titles, not your responsibilities, but your impact. And read them before you go into that conversation or before you apply. And if you've just faced a rejection, give yourself today to feel it. And then tomorrow, ask yourself, what is the one thing I can learn from this? And then what is my next step? This isn't about being fearless. This is about taking a chance and advocating for yourself and being a bit bolder than the version of you who would have stayed quiet or silent. I 100% believe in you, and you deserve to ask for what you're worth. Thank you so much for listening today. I really hope this episode resonated. If it did, please do share it in your network with someone who may need to hear this today. And if you can leave a review, I will be so grateful. Reviews make a big difference for podcasts like mine, and word of mouth is what helps it grow. If you have any questions or you have any thoughts about this episode, or you have a topic that you would like me to talk about in the future, or if you want to be a guest for future episodes, or you have a guest you can recommend, email me at advita@decodingconfidence.com. You can follow me on LinkedIn and you can follow me on Instagram. I'll leave all of this in the show notes. I'll see you next week. Take care.